Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. This is our second interview with esteemed guest, Mr. Jim Willie, and we are looking forward to having him on a repeat basis. He's been kind enough to join us once again for our second interview, where we're going to be diving more into the minutia of the geopolitical and the financial happenings throughout the whole of the world. Now, again, if you are new to the channel, please do like, subscribe, and share, as it does help the channel grow and others gain the knowledge you've been afforded. Now, one thing I'm going to do that I didn't get to do last time is read Jim's bio. It's one of the best and most concise ones I've read to date. Today's expert is Jim Willie. He is a statistical analyst in marketing research and retail forecasting. He holds a PhD in statistics, and his career spans over 25 years. He aspires to thrive in the financial editor world, unencumbered by the limitations of economic credentials. Feel free to visit his free website, where he is the said editor, at www.goldenjackass.com. Jim, thanks for joining the podcast, for being here, and welcome back.
Well, it's good to be back, John. I had to adjust my curtain. When the sun comes out, suddenly it's too bright, so I had to adjust for that. You know, one of the funniest parts of my bio was something that I put in after about 2 or 3 months of doing public articles promoting the newsletter way back in 2004. I just had my 20th anniversary in April. Congrats. Unencumbered by the limitations of economics credentials. Now, that's a mouthful. What I'm saying there is that I'm not a corrupted professional economist. I do not subscribe to the bullshit of the modern day Keynesian economics. I do not buy into the modern monetary theory that says you can print as much money as you want. It's all good as long as you do it for good things. Well, we don't do it for good things. We do it for secretive things. We do it for bribery. We do it to destroy the republic. All right, so I'm not a compromised and, let's say, contaminated economist. I'm self-taught with economics. I had 3 courses in college. And honestly, I really loved microeconomics. But we're not dealing with microeconomics. For those who don't know, the real big difference is that microecon is the theory of the firm, the individual firm. You've got costs, you got fixed costs, you got variable costs. How long before your initial investment do you have profit? Because like for instance, a really good example of digital cameras. I bought one for $900 way back in 1999. What are they now? Like 200, 180? That's because they overcame their original fixed investment cost. Okay, but macroeconomics is far, far more hairy and difficult because it involves national income, taxation, foreign direct investment, domestic investment, interest rates, and a really ugly hidden factor that very few, even good analysts, like to talk about, and that's the narcotics money laundering. And I think it's going to figure in with the bankruptcy of Bank of America, the failure of Bank of America, very, very soon. And we'll just have to watch to see what happens with depositors. I think what's going to happen, I'm just going to jump ahead and make a comment and then stop. I think we're going to see someone like Bank of America announce a failure, and they're going to ration out the depositors' accounts. Like you can remove 5,000 a month, and it might take a long time. And then maybe later, 10,000 a month after they get more funding from the Fed. This is going to be a very complex situation, but I do not expect, and I don't have a lot of company. I do not expect that investors and depositors at banks are going to lose and be bailed in and just frozen out of their accounts. I think they're going to be rationed. They're going to be able to withdraw rationed amounts from their accounts. And it might be prohibitive at first, but I think it's going to be better later on. This is going to get really ugly. We're in uncharted territory, John. This is something we've never seen before. There are a lot of good analysts out there who think we're likely to see a complete financial sector shut down and failure. Stocks, bonds, banks, insurance, pension, everything goes dark for a period of time. It's possible. It's possible. All right. I don't want to jump ahead on some of your questions, but I have a favorable outlook on a lot of different things. I think we've already won. I think, honestly,
Great.
I think
I
the
agree.
White Hats have already won.
I'm with you, and that's where we're going to steer the question.
Okay.
So, thank you, Jim, for that. Okay, so and we're going to touch on Bank of America, as I did have that tucked into some other questions later on. So let's start with one of the most widely covered things that my audience likes to discuss, which is the foreign currency, specifically right now, the first one, Iraq. We see that Soudani was at the helm, getting things done. They just shut down 200 companies, as you may or may not know today, from currency auctions. So they're removing the money laundering systematically over there in Iraq in efforts to come back to the international stage. But they've had a bit of a pause the last couple of weeks from getting everything into parliament. They need to get a speaker. They already have a guy, Mazin, who's a non-corrupt, non-Iranian proxy guy, which is good. But it seems to be, Jim, there's a timing of things, as you know, being orchestrated, because this is a script at the end of the day. So are we simply awaiting Israel to attack Iran's secret nuclear power plants, or do you see something else happening that will free up Iraq?
Wait a minute. I thought you were talking about Iraq.
I am.
Well, then let's talk about Iraq.
We are.
I'm not talking. You jumped to Iran and Israel.
I'm saying that we believe in our camp that Israel is going to free up the U.S. militias and the corrupt Iranian proxies to get Iraq to return to the international stage.
Okay. That's how it. In order to repeat that again. In order to
free up
neutralize Iraqi's efforts.
Well, to neutralize the corrupt Iranian proxies that are sitting in Iraq's government and the U.S. military, deep state militias, there'll be a separator, and we believe Israel is going to be that. Yeah. I want to know if you think that's the case, or you see something else entirely happening.
I'm not really sure about the Iranian influence at this point inside internal banking matters with Baghdad. This is to avoid the confusion of Iran and Iraq. This is called Iran and Baghdad. I get confused. It's messy. It's messy. Just one letter different. Or Persia and Baghdad.
True.
Now, it's not known to many Americans who honestly, you don't know jack shit about foreign matters, about anything. Americans don't know much about anything outside our borders. We are of the top 20 international, industrialized nations. The United States is probably at the dead bottom last for comprehending foreign policy, foreign nation, foreign currency, foreign customs, foreign anything. They don't know jack shit. And it's really quite embarrassing. Most Americans don't realize that 2/3 of the Baghdad parliament is Shiite, is aligned closer to Iran than it is to the rest of the Arab world. And the majority north of Persia, Iran, they tend to be Sunni. But in the Iraqi parliament in Baghdad, there's a very big influence, and it has bothered the heck out of the American occupying force for a long time. Now we're about to get kicked out and turn the Green Zone into the largest shopping mall on the planet. It's about 5 square miles. It has no business being that big. There's no reason the Green Zone and the U.S. Embassy in the Iraq Baghdad capital is that large, except that it's managing black market weapons, black market bioweapons, black market drugs. I'm making an accusation. The Green Zone, the U.S. Embassy is doing drug trafficking, okay? And I don't know about child trafficking, but bioweapon trafficking for sure. It's going to be an amazing time when we have to shut down and evacuate the Green Zone. But to your core question, I have been watching for the last 2.5 years, the events leading up to the climax of they call it the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. And I haven't really prepared much in the way of recent information. Actually, I'll be honest, it was not a topic in my May report, and it was not a topic in my April report, because I'm very much immersed in the dollar, the big banks, the US government debt, and a few other things. But when I was following, and I have been still, we're at kind of a pause right now on the Iraqi reval. And the pause is misleading because it's step number 10 out of 10. I had the privilege of having two men, clients, and one of them I'm closer to than the other. And each one has, I don't know exactly what to call it, privileged or private information about the 10 steps. So for instance, a year and a half ago, there's a big event, and my guy, Big W, said to me, "Hey, Jim, did you check that out? Saudi did the following." And I said, "Yeah, I saw that." And he said, "That's step 6. And I'm so excited because he owns let's just say, a drawer full of Iraqi dinar that could be worth tens of millions of dollars before long. Okay, so what he did was describe to me what happened at step 6, 7, 8, 9. And we got to 10, he said it's going to be more complex. It's going to be more drawn out. It's going to be multiple procedural items within step 10. And here's just some of the ugly things that he mentioned to me. He said they had to limit the wealth potential for Iraqi citizens, for the citizens in Baghdad. They had to limit it. And I said, let me guess, because they didn't want people running around suddenly worth $50 billion disrupting the power structure politically. And he said, exactly. Okay, so imagine you've got like 8 new Bill Gates assholes who are suddenly in the room, and they got their own agenda. They got maybe some criminality involved. They got foreign connections and, linkage. Okay, so the Baghdad people, it's really the Reserve Bank of Iraq. It's the RBI. And the other contact I still have, is someone who knows a man who works in the central bank in Baghdad. And he's bilingual. And he provides a lot of information. Just weird. They're not so much weird as they are detailed procedural steps, like the usage of the new dinar for collateral and loans, the usage of the new dinar to pay off old loans, the usage of the new dinar to mix in with other accounts, the ability to do transfers out of the country with the new dinar. Okay, there are so many different procedural steps. But, when you get right down to it, I heard, and this was back when I got a big update in April or so, I was told, Jim, it looks like the reval is assured, and there's a decent chance it's going to be 3-1, not 1-1. So there's a really good chance it's going to be not only a success, but bigger than anticipated. And let me just throw a little wrinkle in here, a positive wrinkle. It has been said to me by a dozen different people, you are aware that Donald Trump has a pallet full of Iraqi dinar, are you not? And I said, yeah, I heard that it's knee high. And, you can do your various estimations and calculations, but I think what it means is that Donald Trump could be worth anywhere between, just on his Iraqi dinar, anywhere between 10 and $100 billion extra. Okay. So you think he really minds that there's a $300 million fine from a kangaroo court in New York? Here's my attitude toward New York. You New Yorkers and your courts and your kangaroo system and your fake jurors are lined up with jury tampering before the fact. you guys are going to go down. You guys are already starting to go down, and you guys are going to burn in hell. You're nothing but Marxist, fascist, communist, traitors, and assholes, and I have no pity on you. I have no remorse in stamping on you. You're going to get crushed. New York, the big blue city, right? You're going to get overrun by migrants. Anyway, I don't want to get caught up with New York. What do you call it? Disdain. All right, John, the Iraqi dinar is going to happen. And I believe what's happening now, to close out my comment, there's got to be a few different things coordinated, and it is not easy. They've got to get some delicate things in line. And for all we know, one of the things that has to be aligned and coordinated could be the gold token for BRICS. We don't know yet. We don't know. And we're not really told anything. And that's why my guy, Big W, and my other fellow, he's in Canada, and he's got great connections, and he's a smart guy. He's got international legal connections and capabilities. And, you know, that's an inside guy at the Baghdad Central Bank. I mean, what more do you want? I feel very fortunate, and they came to me. And I think it's probably because I got a big mouth. It's probably because I'm rather bold and not bashful in making a claim. And they say, hey, Jim, you know, put this on your megaphone. You know, okay, well, fine, but keep me posted. And sometimes it's information from the Reserve Bank in Baghdad. It's not easy to interpret, John. It's not.
No.
Because we don't know some of the ins and outs in Baghdad regarding some of the past actions with Saddam Hussein and how he might have distorted the system and changed the rules and how they need to be undone. There's a lot of moving parts to this, and that's why step 10 out of 10 is so difficult. But I think it's going to have a positive outcome, and I hope to benefit myself personally, not in a huge way, but in a moderate way that would help me a lot. So I hope that answers. As for Iran and their influence, I don't really know. There could be a connection to undermine some of the pace. But when it comes to Iran, Persia, I have my focus squarely on the Houthis. And they apparently put a missile in the USS Eisenhower. The Eisenhower is ablaze. Our aircraft carrier, the Eisenhower, it has been hit by a powerful, big missile.
Wow.
You know, let me make a comment while you do a transition. Our aircraft carriers have now been demonstrated to be 30 years obsolete. And they're easily brought down by let's just say a $5 million, $3 million missile. A multi-billion-dollar aircraft carrier holding 20, 30 aircraft and helicopters and a lot of, they use the word ordnance because it sounds a lot better than bombs. Munitions, ordnance. It can be brought down with a $3 million missile. Okay, it's called asymmetric warfare, and we're on the downside of that formula.
Good point. Just making note of what you're saying. Thank you, Jim. We don't get into dates or rates or anything like that here, but puzzle pieces like you is where our main core concentration is. So you were saying that there may be some last steps to take. Do you have a rough idea how long you think we're looking at? Because you said not
talking about long. Iraq still?
Yes, sir. Do you have an idea?
Not really, but honestly, we're at what I call a quickening. And I actually thought last year we were in a quickening. Now we're in a quickening within a quickening. Right. We're in a hyper accelerated pace where things are happening. You know, if you look at 10 years ago, there was a big event every 4, 5, 6 months. You look at 3 or 4 years ago, there was a big event every 2 or 3 months. Now you have a big event every 2 or 3 days. Okay. So we have a quickening within the quickening. We're at the peak of the quickening stage. To answer your question, John, I would have to say we're probably at a point now where the Iraqi dinar will probably have some kind of additional progress of a significant nature. I'm being vague. I have to be.
Sure.
By the end of the year. Okay, what is the big mark on the calendar? It's a November election. And there are a couple of marks before that. It's the Democrat and then the Republican conventions. And I don't want to get into any answer for a question that you've not given regarding the U.S. presidential race, but we're going to have a lot of events leading into the conventions and then leading into the election. And I've got a rather strong opinion about how that's going to go. But the Iraqi dinar, they're not alone. I was actually told something that was quite interesting. The revals that are within the Chinese and Eastern sphere are going to happen first. The Vietnam dong.
Yes.
The Zimbabwe dollar. Yep. Zimbabwe dollar. Now let's just leave Venezuela out because they got 1 foot in the East and 1 foot in the West, and they're really a mess. Venezuela is an absolute mess. And even here, we got beggars with a little sign saying, I'm homeless because of what's happening in Venezuela. And I actually give them a few bucks because if there's a little kid under 3 years old, my heart turns and I give them a few bucks. Okay, so look for the quickening to include the Iraqi dinar reval, at least for a significant step. I think what they're going to do, I'm just going to speculate here. They're going to make a policy change regarding foreigners. They're going to try to kiss Trump's ass. And they're going to hold back on their domestic new millionaires and billionaires. They're going to hold back. And there's going to be controversy. And there's going to be maybe an uprising. Maybe, some demonstrations. Why are you screwing us? We're legitimate holders of the new currency, and we want to be treated equally like foreigners. Well, sorry, we need to kiss Trump's ass first. Okay, there are a lot of little intricacies here. And I don't even know. There are a number of things I don't know still. Let's just leave it at that. We need to move on, John. It's a lot of time that was just spent on Iraq that I was not planning on.
That's all right. Well, let's tuck in what you just said about Vietnam into the next question, because that actually segues nicely. So you made a very important, and in my opinion, telling point about Vietnam potentially going first. So the other thing I want to talk to you about is the dong. We have China, Taiwan waiting in the wings. We're just waiting for Russia to claim victory in Ukraine, which we know is a formality. Do you believe that once Russia does declare a victory, that they'll join China into going in Taiwan and doing a short 1 to 2 day?
I don't know about Taiwan, and I'll be very simple.
Okay.
I got nothing to add about Taiwan. I have nothing. They produce about 75% of the chips, some semiconductor chips. I believe that they are a bioweapon center for China and the United States probably working together. Now that's a tough thing for a lot of people to swallow. I believe Taiwan will remain an unsettled issue 5 years from now.
Okay. So let's back up to what you, thank you. Let's back up to what you said a minute ago. Why do you, if I heard you right, why do you think the dong might go ahead of the dinar?
Because China's running the show.
Okay.
The United States is not.
Do you think the dinar, I agree. Do you think the dinar and dong are going to run parallel, or there'll be a separation between them?
Separate time. I just said the Iraqi dinar is going to try to kiss Trump's ass. Right. So it's a different timetable run by different people. In Vietnam, it'd be run by the Chinese.
I'm asking that for clarification for our audience so they hear it for clarity.
Well, Vietnam is close to China.
Yeah.
Iraq is in the Middle East, where we've got a 5 square mile embassy running drugs and bioweapons at the embassy illegally. And this is a known fact. Okay. There were problems. I remember doing a story in 2018 or 19 about bioweapon movements using diplomatic pouches going in and out of Baghdad under protection. It is a crime center.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to convert into the largest shopping mall in the Middle East. I wanted to compete with the line in northwest Saudi Arabia that Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, is working on, which is a huge topic all by itself. Anyway, let's move on. Let's
yes,
move
on. Thank you. You're segueing beautifully with me because that's the next step I want to talk to you about. So, as you may or may not be aware, Jim, a big proclamation happened last week that dropped out that, as you know, in 1957, the U.S. made an arms deal and protection deal with the Saudis to get the petrodollar in place. And that agreement has been in place for 67 years. But as of last week, Mohammed bin Salman, that you mentioned, publicly announced that the petrodollar is not going to be used anymore and that agreement's not being renewed. That happens effective this Sunday, the 9th. My question is, how soon after that agreement expires do you see the dollar, I'm talking about optically, crashing? And was this the last thing popping or prepping up the US dollar?
Well, I don't like the word crashing.
Okay.
A lot of people use the word crashing and they can't define it. And once you put them to scrutiny, they back down. I thought you were going to ask, when are we going to start seeing problems for the dollar as a result of Mohammed bin Salman abandoning the petrodollar?
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Hmm.
Because that's when they abandoned the petrodollar. This is a formality signature. 2 years ago, Saudi Arabia announced that they were going to accept as a standard form of payment the Chinese yuan for their oil sales and their natural gas sales and their petrochemical sales from Aramco. So in 2022, in my book, the petrodollar was abandoned. Whatever happened last week, to me, honestly, big fat yawn. Sometimes when you have a big event, you say to your other party, well, let's do a formality on that maybe a year from now. And we'll have cocktails. And we'll have music. And we'll have dancers. That's what we had. Okay? 2022 is when the shit hit the fan and the petrodollar died. And that is precisely when the BRICS accelerated their de-dollarized payments. And that is when Russia, I can't say they initiated anything, but they made it a whole lot more difficult for Western Europe. Okay, everybody likes to think Western Europe delivered Russia a blow. No, Western Europe delivered them sanctions and Russia gave them the blow. The German economy is almost destroyed. Mm-hmm. So did Germany really stick it to Russia? No, Germany committed suicide, industrial suicide. I got clients in Germany and they keep me posted, but I wish I had more. I got to say something about Germany very quickly. 6 or 7 years ago, I had over 100 German clients. And every month I got maybe 1 or 2 new ones. And I don't get any new German clients. I've gotten 1 in the last year. The Germans used to be, I need to be very careful with my words here. The Germans used to be really smart, really crafty, and difficult to make fools of. And that's gone. That's gone. It's now, they're like, half the population is propaganda monkeys. Okay? They still hate Ukraine, even though they're committing suicide. They're only beginning to wake up to their chancellor, what's his name? Olaf Scholz. They're only now waking up to the sabotage that has happened to their economy. Russia has delivered them a death blow. And the United States blew up Nord Stream 2. The Russians know it. The Germans are trying to keep it from the German people from knowing it, trying to prevent the German people from being aware of that. Okay, now back to what we were talking about. Russia is moving along at a pretty good speed for de-dollarizing.
Mhm.
You know, after the original, okay, there are 2 rounds to Ukraine. The first one was 2014, where Hillary and Mossad did their thing in the Maidan Square. It's called the Maidan coup because it's Maidan Square. It's kind of like, you know, Times Square is to New York City what Maidan is to Kiev. So it was called the Maidan coup, with amphetamines thrown everywhere. Everybody was nuts during it. You know, rooftop snipers to make sure. Okay, that was step 1. Back then, the Russians de-dollarized. I don't think even 18 months passed before the Russians got rid of $160 billion worth of treasury bonds. So the Russians taught everybody how to de-dollarize. Now, I'm just going to throw something in here that doesn't belong there, but to me, it's relevant. The Japanese are the best at de-dollarizing right now on the planet, and they're not even a BRICS nation. That's coming later. All right, so the Saudis, let me just say something about Saudi Arabia, because I followed it closely a few years ago, and I'm talking too loud again, John.
That's okay.
The Saudis had some very important events. I think it was around 2019. The King Salman was, let's just say, marked as incompetent. King Salman was marked as suffering from dementia. They would take him to Moscow, Russia, in order to get his signature on something, and he didn't know where he was, and he didn't know who he was talking to, and he didn't know what the document was about. They found that to be an intolerable situation, and because he wasn't dead, they made Mohammed bin Salman kind of like the operating king, but he was still the crown prince. About a year or 2 later, Mohammed bin Salman was assassinated. So MBS now is a replacement cousin. That's what I call it. A half brother stepped in. Now, for those Americans who don't know, the Saudi royals typically have about 10 to 15 wives. And they tend to have about 30 to 50 sons and daughters who are all half sons and half daughters. I'm sorry, what do you call it? Half brothers and half sisters, not half sons. Sons and daughters from different mothers, and half brothers and half sisters. So imagine what happens when the crown prince is dead and you have a battle for the throne with all the different half brothers, and you got 20 or 30 of them fighting. Unbelievable. That's called the Saudi royal succession battles. All right. I believe that a cousin replaced Mohammed bin Salman. We got a new MBS. And many people think, well, it doesn't matter. In a sense, it doesn't. But let's just put a little footnote on that. Because this new guy has murdered a couple of tribal chiefs in the Northwest in order to facilitate the construction of what they call the line, which is a very advanced, like super city, very high-tech super city, the line. It's going to be like, I think, 20 kilometers long. That's why they call it a line. Underground facilities, because it's hot as hell there. You know, I had a colleague who spent time in Dubai, and he told me in July, it gets to 135 degrees, and when a big truck goes down the road, it leaves tracks in the avenue. Okay, that's how hot it gets. So he said between 10:30 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon, no one goes outside. So they create tunnel structures to go from A to B underground, from one building to another. You know, like the 20th floor will have a passageway to the next building over, and it's like 20 meters long. Okay, it's by design. All right, I'm full of these little tidbit items, but to get back to your question, the petrodollar was abandoned in 2022, and here's a very important fact to follow that up. The Saudis and the UAE, they operate together. They're cousins. They operate together. Together, they dictated to OPEC that the Chinese yuan would be accepted for oil and gas payments across all of OPEC. So anyone who says that the petrodollar is now suddenly dying has missed something that happened 2 years ago. OPEC adopted Chinese currency payments 2 years ago. We have been having some of the consequences of the petrodollar contract now being dissolved and liquidated. The contract, and that's mostly between the dollar and crude oil, to be sure. But there's another third leg to that stool, and it's called precious metals. And it doesn't have an equal size leg. It's mostly dollar and crude oil. Let's be very plain. But the smaller third leg is precious metals. And when that gets liquidated, they must go back to 30-to-1 ratio, because that's what the petrodollar instituted for the ratio in that contract. So for me, it's like a lock. Well, we're at 80 something now, maybe low 80s for the gold silver ratio. Well, okay, well, it's going to take its time to get down to 30. I'm not worried. It'll get down to 30. It might even get below 30. It might get to 25. I'm just going to throw something out. 15,000 gold, 700 silver, 22-to-1.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my long range goals. And I did not say next year. I get misquoted once in a while, John. I'll go through my forecast sequence with years if you wish, but I mentioned the petrodollar that has a derivative contract, and in it is a small component of precious metals locked in at 30-to-1 gold silver ratio. There are a lot of moving parts to this. Let me just say in conclusion that this is going to be the largest wealth transfer in human history. The Treasury bond foundation is going to gradually be whittled down to nothing. Mm-hmm. And gold will take its place. And every nation in the early stages that makes fast progress in knocking down their treasuries and building up their gold is going to be attacked. Everyone. And right now, that's Japan. They're being attacked.
It's so great that you mentioned that, Jim, because one of the interviews we do regularly with one of our subject matter experts like yourself, in terms of experience, I posed that question to him about, Japan is dumping the treasury bond yield over the side, like the Boston Tea Party. And did he see the BRICS, Japan joining the BRICS anytime soon? If so, what would that do to the US dollar? And he was like, "Oh, I don't see that happening anytime soon." And he's entitled to his opinion. That's fine. We're cool with that. But I just disagree. I feel like that is a country that definitely is going to need the auspices of the BRICS sooner than later. So I'm really glad you touched on that.
Well, not just the auspices for trade and the open doors for trade. Japan needs to prevent a banking system implosion. Mm-hmm. Because they're working now steadfastly in building up their gold reserves secretly.
Right.
And I believe off balance sheet for their central bank called the Bank of Japan. They have been now, I'm not sure we need to open up a whole new giant room. It's called the yen carry trade. But the Japanese still own $850 billion of treasuries. And they're vulnerable. Mm-hmm. I need to make a certain point about a principle,
Sure.
because this is not well understood. I'm getting a bright sun on my face here. When a country like Japan, a major Forex nation, that's foreign exchange, I had it was really cute. A client friend of mine said, Jim, what's Forex? He had number 4 and an X. I said, no, it's Forex, F-O-R-E-X, foreign exchange. When a nation like Japan sells treasury bonds, my knee-jerk reaction a year ago was, well, that'll hurt the dollar and help the yen. That'll lift the yen because they're selling the dollar instrument. That's not correct. That's not correct. When the Japanese central bank sells a boatload of treasury bonds, and they did in late 2021 and 2, late 2021 and all through 22. It was October 21 to October 22. When they don't retain the proceeds from the treasury bond sales, then they don't retain it in their dollar reserve and move to gold or anything else. When they don't retain it in the dollar reserve, their yen goes down. And the reason is kind of paradoxical. It's really a little bit confusing to try to explain, but let me try to keep it simple. All the major Forex currencies are dollars. All of them are dollars. They just have different jackets on. The Japanese currency, the yen, is a dollar with a yen jacket on. So when they sell the treasury bonds, they're selling their own currency unless they retain dollars in their dollar reserve, and they did not. They bought gold, and their currency went down 22%. I asked good analysts, if the Japanese sold $180 billion in treasury bonds, why did their currency go down 22% during that process? And they say, well, I don't know, maybe there are other factors. Yeah, the other factor is you don't know shit about what's going on. That's the other factor. That's what I told a couple guys. You don't know shit. You haven't looked into this, you haven't learned, and you don't have a smart colleague like I do. I got a guy named Raj. He's smart as the dickens. All right, so the Japanese are going to have to create a new monetary and banking system because they're buried. It's like a ball and chain. You throw the Japanese into the Pacific Ocean and you got a ball and chain around their legs, and it's called the U.S. Treasury bond. They need to cut it off before they bite their leg off. Okay? And it's not easy to do. Now, there's something called Operation Sandman, and it's really quite interesting. There's a threat that the BRICS nations, 20 nations, would sell $2 trillion in 2 days. And because of Japan, I think it's going to be 20 or more nations selling $2 trillion or more dollars of treasury bonds in 2 years. John, I think we got a 2-year nightmare for dissolving the treasury bond structure as a foundation. And remember, the Rothschilds created a debt foundation for basically the global monetary system. You could say it's the United States monetary system, but it's all the major Forex nations also, because those are just dollars with different jackets on.
Right.
And it's very complex. It's going to be a long, drawn out, dangerous situation for the United States. And I think the result is we're going to get a heaping load of price inflation, a heaping load. And it's going to cause a lot of problems in the United States. John Connally, way back in the 70s, he was the Treasury Secretary for, I think, Nixon. He said, the dollar's our currency and it's your problem. And now they're realizing that. Country after country is loaded with treasury bonds in their central bank, and they're toxic. They can't get rid of them quickly. They cannot do that. Look what happened to Japan. Right now, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers used to work together, and now it's basically the Rockefellers. They're murdering mid-level Japanese officials in the government to prevent them from hastening their abandonment of the Treasury dollar. I'm
Mm.
sorry, the Treasury bond form of the dollar. That's a really big mistake to make. The Treasury dollar is a new dollar coming, and it's the Federal Reserve dollar that is active now. It is the Treasury bond that I'm referring to. These country after country, they want badly, they want desperately, John, desperately to get rid of their Treasury bonds, UST. UST is the acronym, US Treasuries. That is the toxic asset in hundreds of central bank vaults. You know, it's really computer screens, data banks, but you get the idea in their Forex reserves. There's not going to be a simple resolution. They're going to have to make a transition gradually to gold and work with the United States so that it does not implode the United States.
Right.
Unbelievable events coming, and all during this process, gold goes up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
3 years minimum. Bull market, 3 years minimum. If you're worried now that gold is down like 50, 80 bucks, I tell you, I couldn't give a crap. I couldn't give a backward flying dried rat turd that gold and silver are down a little bit. All it means is that we're giving a bigger discount to China, Japan, and India for the next round up. And for the smart Americans who actually have available funds to do buying, they're giving a discount. If you think this is a bad thing, then you're not a really good student. I'm talking to the crowd, not you, John.
Sure, of course. Of course. Great. Well,
Okay.
Well, thank you, Jim. Okay, next one. Interesting here because you were talking about the banks earlier, so I thought this was apropos timing. 517 billion in unrealized losses hit the U.S. banking systems, reported by Greg Manarino. How many banks do you think will be affected by this, and how long will the Fed be able to pump the 10-year Treasury bond yield?
Oh boy, this is something we've been waiting for quite a long time. We were told 4 or 5 months ago that they had $840 billion in unrealized losses. Now we're learning that it's 550 in treasuries. So I guess the rest is what, in Fannie Mae bonds, but I don't believe that. I think there are other banks that are not being counted for their treasuries, and it's the rest of the 200 billion. This is a very difficult question to answer, and I don't even have a great answer for this. We're going to see some big banks fail. And what's happening now is it's like when you've got a patch on a wound and you pull it off, sometimes you pull more than your wound off. You pull the scab off, you pull a little bit of your arm, the muscle matter, and okay, you ripped it off. Okay, what I'm referring to now is we had working for over a year the bank term funding program, where banks could take some of their assets and not mark to the market, to their book value, borrow their book value with this Federal Department of Treasury facility, bank term funding program. This is called the funding program. Well, at the end of March, they announced it's no longer. Now they're announcing that after 90 days or something, they've got to be paid back. Well, these banks are going to have to pay back a loan on an asset that sells for 30 to 45% less than what they borrowed. It's like, hey, we got some nice Alka-Seltzer for you, but there's a little bit of arsenic in it. This is not going to go down well. We're going to have some banks that suddenly cannot manage their liquidity requirements, cannot manage their quarterly, their falsification, let's be plain, falsification of their quarterly report for earnings. And they're going to have to admit that they had to drain some of their cash to pay back the bank term funding program at the Department of Treasury, because the loan was for 100% on book and the value marked to market was only 60 cents on the dollar. So they're short. This is a universal problem with the bigger banks. Okay, that's the rub. We're going to see some banks, and I think Bank of America is toast. I really dislike them a lot. Um,
Okay.
there are two or three banks. I don't want to really get too plain. I don't want to offer specifics of why I dislike them. It has to do with things they've done to the newsletter. Okay. Let me just mention one thing because it's kind of harmless.
Sure.
A lady in New York tries to make an order for the hat trick letter, the newsletter on golden-jackass.com. A lady in New York tries to make an order and it failed because the bank got in the way and blocked the payment. It's $110 for a 6-month subscription. No big secret. And the lady writes me and said, Jim, I don't understand. I'm trying to do an order for your newsletter. I saw you on such and such show and my bank is blocking it. And I said, let me guess, JP Morgan Chase. I'm right every time. Every time. It's happened 15 times. I'm right every time. It's Chase. Okay. They blocked the payment. They hate me. Why? Because I call them a criminal organization. Why? Because I point out that they have $250 billion over the last 15 years of fines and penalties with non-disclosure agreements made and settlement cases where no felony is admitted. 250 billion. What do you call that, John? I call it the cost of doing fraudulent business. Okay, that's why they don't like me. So don't use your Chase credit card to sign up for my newsletter. Here's another one. There are a couple more that don't like me, but I'll leave it there. I don't want to go long-winded. By the way, I have a hard stop in about 15 minutes.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Okay, so let's move to the next one. We're awaiting the long-awaited decision, inevitably, by Judge Torres on the XRP victory. Do you surmise that the judge is waiting for the situation with Iran to play out to rule in favor of XRP? And what does this do for the SEC and their already tarnished reputation?
I missed part of your question. Did you say Iran?
Yes.
I'm not aware of Iran being involved with Ripple.
Well, they're not. I was talking about what we talked about with Iraq and the factions being. Okay.
That just muddies the water for the question.
Okay. Let's go to this. When XRP does win, what does that do to the SEC and their already tarnished reputation?
Well, they've already lost 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 cases. So losing another one is a no-brainer and kind of a non-event. So let me just make it simple. When the SEC drops that case, 3 weeks later, they'll open a new case. And will you ask the same question? No, they lose every case. So the word is out that the SEC has no case against Ripple and XRP. They have no case. So the big issue is, when does XRP march along making bilateral contracts at high level, like with central banks? And the answer is a year ago. A year ago, they've already done it. They lost a big case a year ago when they were declared not a security. Right. And the SEC tried to drag it out, and another court slammed them and said, get out of the way. What are you doing? Okay, XRP, I believe, is going to be adopted by what has already been talked about and announced and discussed openly by the BRICS nations. They call it the blockchain platform. And they talk about it on Shanghai, China. They talk about it connecting with Moscow in Russia. They talk about it connecting with Tehran in Iran, Persia. They don't talk much about it connecting to Delhi in India. India is to me, India is a mysterious element of the BRICS. And we don't have enough time to get into it all, but I'll just make a couple of high-level comments that India is talking like they don't like the gold token from BRICS. India is talking like they prefer to have their rupee to be accepted by other BRICS nations. And behind the scenes, India is working feverishly to make all kinds of other alternatives to work. Like, for instance, the UAE dirham. Its symbol is AED. the dirham, DIRHAM. That is being used in three-party payment contracts with the BRICS nation. It's going to be used more. India is going to be involved in that. India is a key country for buying Russian oil and selling, let's just say, petroleum products to Western Europe, like gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. Wow. Wow. So India is a very big player for BRICS, and they're facing British threats. Okay. They used to be part of, way back in Mahatma Gandhi days, they used to be part of the British Empire, and it didn't work out. Let's just say they got kicked out. But when they got kicked out, they left in a lot of grappling hooks. And they tried to do a power play 5 years ago in India. Well, I'm talking about India more than I wanted to, but these are important points. The British tried to get the Indian government to latch onto and monetize the temple gold, which is believed to be at least 15 and maybe 20,000 tons. Temple gold, like a temple here, a temple there, and 5,000 other temples in India. They all have gold, like a gold vault at the temple. They tried to monetize it all. And the Indians told them this. And they had some problems with the British. And I believe what's happening now is that Modi and India are talking out of, I love the expression from the Native Americans with the forked tongue. You say one thing to one guy and you say the other thing. Okay, that's what they're talking. They're talking nonsense and lies to the British bankers. We don't like the gold token from BRICS, but we're going to be working on it very, very actively behind the scenes. Okay. XRP, I believe, is going to be adopted by the blockchain platform as a primary payment vehicle. Now, it is obvious the blockchain platform will be used for the digital yuan. It'll be used for the digital ruble. It'll be used for the digital rial out of Iran. I like calling it Persia. I got a Persian client who said, Jim, we like the name Persia. The Europeans like to call us Iran. We like calling it Persian. It was the Persian Empire. It was the Persian Empire for 4,000 years. And then you Westerners want to change its name. Okay. I believe that this month in St. Petersburg, we might start to hear at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, the SPIEF in St. Petersburg, we might start to hear more rumble about how XRP is going to be adopted by some nations on an experimental basis. And what does that mean? Oh, like France could be buying Qatari LNG. And they might say, we're going to pay 10% in XRP. And we're going to pay like 70% in Chinese yuan. And the other 20%, who knows? I'm not going to, I don't know. I don't care. The important thing for me is that we're going to see a smidgen, a notable, more than negligible amount of XRP is going to be used here, there, and everywhere. One of my biggest reasons for liking XRP and thinking it has a big future is that when the SEC has no case and it's thrown out, they bring on another no case that has no possibility of taking root, that has no legs. Why does the SEC continue to do that? Because it's going to be real. Because they don't operate it, govern it, and control it. I use contrary thinking for a lot of different things. Here's one of my favorite for Bitcoin. I think it was a couple Christmases ago. JP Morgan, my favorite not bank, said Bitcoin's going to zero. I think it was December of 22. And what do I react with? That's the bottom. It's going up from here because JP Morgan said it's going to zero. And I got it right. To me, that wasn't really hard. It's not very hard. I think Bitcoin is going to do just fine. They're going to try to threaten it with the ICO, standard and try to exclude it. And the rest of the world is going to say, who the hell do you think you are? You know, the ISO standard is an attempt to centralize the decentralized concept of digital currency, digital assets, digital finance. The ISO standard is an attempt to centralize the decentralized concept. Can you swallow that? Well, I don't. No. Okay. I know there's going to be an attempt to make standardized and get rules and regulations and policies and ratios and, you know, contract stipulations and a lot of different things. But they're not going to be able to say, you're in and you're out. That's not, this is decentralized world. It's going to be an amazing, I think XRP minimum is going to go to 100. And one of my favorite financial analysts, Homer Simpson, he could be right. He could be right at 540. He could be right. Homer is a smart guy. He's funny looking, but he's a smart guy. And who was telling you about 9/11 way back in the 1990s? It was Homer Simpson, that smart guy, funny looking fella. I don't know if he's on the Wall Street payroll. I think he's too funny looking to be on their payroll.
I love your candor. Okay, two last questions for today. So staying on the crypto front for a minute, President Trump came out last week optically and said that he was in favor of cryptocurrency. And I love how in the beginning, a while back, he said he wasn't. And I think he was doing that to kind of draw out the deep state and see who was going to try to push the CBDC angle, just my personal opinion.
Yep.
But he's very vocally in favor of Bitcoin as well as other decentralized cryptos like XRP and XLM and many other things. Do you believe he has every intention of backing it with precious metals in the new digital economic reality?
Well, let's just put it this way. If we're starting to see what the real Trump believes, because before he was either ignorant or drawing out the enemy, and never dismissed the fact that he might not have been very well schooled in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. So we can always say he was drawing out the enemy by means of his ignorance. Okay. Let's be very plain. I like being plain. I don't like being really complicated about some things, but if the United States doesn't have a digital dollar to work on the blockchain, we're going to be odd man out in global trade. Right now, we're in a very precarious position with global trade payment methods. I got told by my guy, Euroraj, around March, like 3 months ago. Yeah, 3 months ago. Isn't it amazing? We're almost halfway done with the year. He noted to me that we got 20 different US ports with oil super tankers loading up. We were getting credits for foreign trade to pay for imports coming to the United States by loading up foreign super tankers with oil. That's how precarious it's gotten now. Now, if we don't get a digital gold-backed dollar to play ball, we're going to be trading in digital Chinese yuan. Okay? So we better get our own act together. We're going to be using their currency, and we're going to be buying it with our gold on their market. A drain. Okay, we better get with the program or we're going to be odd man out. I think there's a very significant risk that the United States is going to suffer a global embargo. We're going to be banned from trade by other countries, and it might be by the BRICS. And let me just make a point here, close out this particular area, and I gotta go. I told you hard stop at quarter after. In 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19, I talked about the Eurasian trade zone. From 2015 to 2019, I talked about the Eurasian trade zone. And I said it was going to be led primarily by Russia and China. And they were going to capture Eastern Europe, and they were going to capture the petroleum producing, the oil nations of the Persian Gulf. And that's what the BRICS are. The BRICS are what I used to call the Eurasian Trade Zone, for lack of a better name. It was Eurasia, and I thought that they were going to capture part of Europe. Look what happened. The Eurasian Trade Zone cannot do trade now with Western Europe. Right now, we've got the idiots running Germany trying to cut out Chinese trade. And Volkswagen just told them, if we cut out Chinese trade, we've already cut out Russian trade, we are going bankrupt, you morons. That's what they told the German government. So now they're doing compromising to retain the Chinese trade. The German government is run by Nazis, the NATO globalist, Klaus Schwab, Davos Nazis. And they would prefer to destroy the German economy and industry rather than to have them hook up with Russian contracts for commodity supply. And it's not just oil and gas. It's aluminum, it's iron, it's vanadium and what do you call it? Titanium for aircraft parts like wings. You cannot cut out the number one commodity supplier on the planet and expect to survive as an economy. And that's what the NATO and the Russian sanctions are all about. We're going to cut out Russia and punish them. No, cut out Russia and commit economic suicide. Okay, Western Europe is facing economic suicide. It's not just Germany. It's not just Germany. Well, look, I'm going to have to.
Sure.
I got to go.
So last thing, where can people find your work, and last thoughts?
Okay, it's golden-jackass.com. And for those who are curious, when I was a little kid, you know, I used to be a small kid. I used to be a long time ago. Okay, my mother would call me my little jackass because I was insolent, and she also called me my charming rogue, because I would do things that nobody else could get away with, because I would put a smile on it, I'd put a compliment, I'd hug her and walk away after I stole something. Okay, golden-jackass.com. The Stock and Trade is a newsletter. It's a yellow button in the center called subscribe. I'm available for consult sessions. I give extra time. I'm pretty generous. If you're a nice guy and it's an interesting conversation, we go on and on. I have a donate button that no longer has any PayPal connectivity. They were not nice to me, and I got rid of them. There's also a sponsor button for wealthy people, and it gets used a lot more than some people think and a lot less than what I want. But I'm very grateful for the sponsors. They're a blessing to me. And I got to say that the majority of the people who are the larger donors are Christians like I am. And I thank the Lord Jesus for his divine hand in keeping me going. In 2019, I almost had to shut down. And a lot of people came to my aid. A very wealthy fellow south of California came to my aid, and I'm very grateful to you, sir, if you see this. So the newsletter has been around. I'm looking at the calendar. I just posted issue 242, and 240 is 20-year anniversary in April. So this has been a long ride, John, and the last few years have been very difficult for me because I'm exposing not just a lot of corruption. I'm talking about money laundering for child trafficking and narcotics trafficking, and they don't like that. And there are a lot of people out there who are really good-hearted and smart, and they don't understand that the occult forces are real. The satanic forces are real, and I've been harmed many times. And I try to put some probabilities on it. And honestly, it's way more. The events that have happened to me to harm me are way more than 1 in 100 trillion. Way more than 1 in 100 trillion. Okay, so I'm targeted. And I'm not going to stop because I've got the shield of my Lord Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
And I pray every morning that the demons get behind Jesus' shield. Okay, this is real. This is not just a battle for the Republic. It's not just a battle for legitimate monetary system. It's a battle for the human species. It's a battle for the integrity of the planet. It's a battle for food supply and economic integrity. And we need to win, and we need to put these people on the ground.
Absolutely.
So thanks for having me on, John.
Thanks, Jim. We look forward to having you again. We appreciate all the information.
All right. All right. Bye now.